Hey, it's John. Welcome back to my channel, and today I've got part 3 of a 3-part series I'm doing documenting the initial construction segment of the California high-speed rail system in the San Joaquin Valley. This video will focus on construction package 4, which is the shortest of the 3 construction packages currently under construction, as it is only 22 miles long. Now, starting off this video, we are actually going back to my San Joaquin footage that I shot about a few weeks ago. And we just passed the beginning of construction package 4 on the southern end at Madera and Poplar Avenues, and we just passed under the Merced Avenue grade separation. Now, I did document all of this with my drone, and we will be switching to that footage shortly, but I thought it was be kind of a fun idea to get a different view of the corridor from the BNSF trackage via a San Joaquin. So here we are just south of the town of Wasco, and we are going through what is a tighter curve on the BNSF tracks just west of the high-speed rail tracks off to the right. The high-speed rail tracks are forming a much shallower curve, obviously, so that they can maintain much higher operating speeds. So just south of the Wasco Viaduct, which will actually bring the high-speed rail tracks over the BNSF tracks into Wasco, is the Kimberlina Road Viaduct. You can see it off to the right there. It was still being framed up. As construction package 4 is the shortest segment, it is actually scheduled to be the first completed. It is actually scheduled to be completed in April of 2022, so there's not a whole lot of work left on this project. But obviously the largest project on this section is the Wasco Viaduct, which we are currently passing under. Construction is obviously in full swing, and we will be able to see much more clearly from the air that there's not a whole lot of work left even on this very large structure, that pergola structure, but construction is wrapping up nicely, which is great to see, and perhaps these shorter construction segments are the way to go forward. But here we can see off to the left there's a bit of BNSF track realignment through the town of Wasco, which of course again will make much more sense from the air. But you can see the temporary signals and also a temporary bridge off to the left in the town of Wasco as we are stopping here at the station. There was a former San Joaquin station in Wasco that was actually not used by Amtrak anymore. It was the location of the Wasco Chamber of Commerce, but that station has since been torn down, as you might have been able to tell from that video. Anyways, here we are back at the southern end of CP4 at the intersections of Poplar and Madera Avenues. Those are the BNSF tracks there and SR43. In the future, as more construction packages are signed for the high-speed rail system, the tracks will of course continue south through Wasco and on towards Bakersfield, ultimately extending towards Los Angeles. But the initial operating segment, which is still scheduled to open sometime in the late 2020s, perhaps early 2030s, trains will be running between Bakersfield and Merced, but ultimately, of course, the system will be built out to connect San Francisco and Los Angeles, as has always been the goal. So anyway, here we are traveling north on CP4, and you can see that this section of right-of-way is basically complete. As you might have been able to tell from the San Joaquin ride, there's, instead of large concrete intrusion protection barrier walls, in this section there are built-up sections of dirt separating the two rights-of-ways, and there's also a massive amount of culverts. These culverts provide both drainage capabilities in the event of heavy rains and flooding in the valley here, but they also provide wildlife undercrossings, which is one of the large change orders that has raised the cost of CP4. Here we see that the Merced Avenue grade separation is much further along than it was last year. You can see that the roads have been paved out and the approach ramps are complete. Obviously, there's still not much work done yet on the bridge, but that is definitely has changed, as this footage is a couple of months old already. I believe the Merced Avenue grade separation actually went through a bit of a redesign, but as we can see, it is similar to the McCombs Avenue grade separation up ahead. A simple diversion kind of to swing the roadway around north of the existing alignment, which will of course be removed. But here it should make a little bit more sense. You can see the much more shallow high-speed rail alignment curve, and then the much tighter BNSF tracks off to the left. And you can also see that this section of right-of-way is in such an advanced state that fencing has been erected to secure the high-speed rail right-of-way. Obviously, there are breaks in the fencing to allow for wildlife to pass through, as well as drainage, like I said. But the majority of the high-speed rail corridor will be fenced, unlike the majority of American freight railroads, providing extra security and preventing trespassers from entering the right-of-way, which is definitely a good thing. You can still see those white poles mark the location of power lines. Those poles have wires to act as an aid to prevent wire strikes, so I'm sure that those power lines will have to be removed. It's just one of the many ongoing utility relocation projects that are really not under the direct control of either the construction contractor or the high-speed rail authority. Most utility relocations are kind of left up to the utility owner, and of course the utility company is reimbursed for those utility relocations. But you can see that this section of corridor is essentially done. You can see they have those concrete K-rails blocking people from driving on the right-of-way, because obviously this would probably be a tempting stretch of land for people to ride motorcycles or something like that on. But obviously the high-speed rail authority does not want people accessing this right-of-way. But here we can see the Kimberlina Road Viaduct. Obviously it wasn't quite as far along as it was in that San Joaquin cab ride, but nevertheless it is coming along nicely. And like I said, the entire CP4 is projected to be completed by April of next year in 2022. Obviously, there's not a whole lot of time left to complete all these projects, and it's exciting to see what the final right-of-way will look like in preparation for the track and systems contracts being let sometime early next year. That's still kind of the tentative plan, to get those contracts signed next year and get working on installing track and electrification and signaling systems. Here you can see this large section of mechanically stabilized earth retaining walls holding up the earth embankment to connect the multiple sections of this viaduct and pergola structure. And you can see there's purple rebar for advanced corrosion protection, as these structures are all, I believe they're estimated to last about 100 years. So definitely built for the future, as this system will be heavily utilized in the future, I'm sure, but also redoing all of these structures while trying to maintain train service will be quite a struggle. But fortunately, that's people a century from now's problem. So but you can see part of these walls are cast in place concrete, the retaining walls, but also going through the town of Wasco, they will have to be building intrusion protection barrier walls, similar to what we saw on construction package 1. There's several miles of barrier walls currently built and under construction on that video, so if you missed it, you can check it out. Link will be up in the corner or in the description. But anyway, here we can see the BNSF track realignment. These are actually temporary track realignments, what's known as shoe fly tracks. And this bridge that we're about to pass over is actually a temporary bridge, for Pozo Avenue, while a final bridge is built on the current alignment of the BNSF tracks. And then that temporary bridge will be removed, and the high-speed rail bridge over Pozo Avenue will be built. And Pozo Avenue will, of course, be an underpass. One of the other big change orders that was completed in agreement with the city of Wasco was removing 6th Street, which is actually the road just north of the station here. So 6th Street will be closed, and underpasses will be built at Pozo Avenue, like we just saw. Here is where the Amtrak station is located. It's just kind of a shack. It's not even an Am shack. It's just an outdoor station. But here we are leaving Wasco Station, and this is like as I said, this is 6th Street, which will ultimately be closed, which definitely reduced construction costs on this construction package. And even though it may be a bit of a disruption for the people of Wasco, it will increase safety as there will be no more grade crossings in Wasco. The underpass currently up ahead for SR 46 will actually be rebuilt and widened so that SR 46 can be expanded to 4 lanes. That was kind of the compromise reached between the state and the city of Wasco and the California High-Speed Rail Authority. But you can see the bridge abutment there for the high-speed rail bridge over SR 46 has already been built, and there is another bridge section on the north side of the road. But here we can see a return of the earth embankment that is acting as a intrusion protection barrier between the freight railroad tracks and the high-speed rail tracks. And on the north end of Wasco, as we are leaving town, we can see the McCombs Avenue grade separation, which is a little bit further along than Merced Avenue was. There's the existing grade crossing, and the columns have been framed up, and false work is currently being installed. In case you're wondering, the setup for this train that we're riding is a Siemens Charger locomotive with the aerodynamic cowl on the rear, followed by a Horizon coach, and we are currently riding in a Superliner 1 car that has actually been rebuilt for the Amtrak California services, and we're looking out the front window of that car. Off to the left, as the tracks diverge from the BNSF, you can see the Pozo Creek Viaduct kind of poking out from the trees there. That was one of the first projects completed on the entire high-speed rail system. Not the first, but one of the first. It's been completed for a couple of years now. So back to the drone flyover. Here we are again at the Amtrak station. And there is 6th Street, which again will be closed. And we are going to continue heading north towards the SR 46 underpass, which, as I said, is already existing, but it will have to be rebuilt so that SR 46 can be widened to 4 lanes. And this will include a similar arrangement to the Pozo underpass. I believe that high-speed rail bridge will probably be utilized by BNSF trains, and temporary tracks will obviously be rerouted, again, as we saw with Pozo Avenue. But ultimately, the BNSF tracks will be relocated back to their current alignment, just on a new bridge. Off to the left is actually the main offices. You can see those trailers down there on the left corner. Those are the California Rail Builders, which is the joint venture building construction package 4. That's their main offices. And here we can clearly see where that earth embankment barrier protection barrier wall basically is separating the 2 rights of way between high-speed rail on the left and BNSF on the right. Here we can see much clearer the McCombs Avenue grade separation, where the new elevated roadway is being built north of the existing at grade alignment. And you can see that those columns separate between the BNSF tracks and SR 43 were actually fully encased in concrete on that San Joaquin ride. So construction is definitely moving forward on this project, which is, of course, nice to see. It looks like, just based on the design of this bridge, I believe this bridge is going to be cast in place. So there will be, along with Merced Avenue, so there'll be a lot of temporary false work being built to support the plywood concrete forms that will frame up the cast-in-place structure. As far as statistics go for construction package 4, the design is 100% complete, obviously, as it is so near completion. As of early last year, only 77% of the right-of-way has been acquired. I'm sure that is much closer to 100, if not 100%. As we will see in this video, the majority of the right-of-way has been touched by the construction company at some point. The entire cost of construction package 4 is $639 million, which is up slightly from the original value of $454 million, but nevertheless much more close to being on budget than, like, say, construction package 2-3, which has had significant cost increases. Anyway, here we can see a canal that will have to be rerouted. You can see that section of orchard on the left that has been cleared. I'm sure that the canal will be rerouted through that cleared section of land, and I would imagine that work on that project will be picking up here throughout winter as there are less demands on the canal system. And let me know if you're interested in seeing. I recorded quite a bit, not nearly all of the San Joaquin ride with my out the front window, so that quote-unquote kind of cab ride footage. I can definitely throw a video together, and I think I will, even if nobody requests it, just so that people can see the sections of the high-speed rail alignment from the San Joaquin BNSF route. If you're interested in seeing that, I will definitely be posting that. So here at Taussig Avenue, I'm not exactly sure. I believe Taussig may be closed, as we don't see any kind of grade separation being built there. I'm sure that's probably what that entails. But here we can see this section of right-of-way actually has the riprap lining the edges of the earth bankment, which is raised up between 10 and 15 feet along the entire alignment. So it's to protect the high-speed rail alignment from flooding, because there are signs everywhere in the valley saying beware of flooding when and if it actually rains, as the whole valley is essentially a big bowl due to its former life as an inland sea. Here we are at Pozo Creek, and like I said, again, this was one of the first projects completed on not just CP4, but the entire high-speed rail project. I believe it was actually completed in 2018. I believe also that Blankenship Avenue will be closed, similar to Taussig, as we do not see any grade separation activity being built there. Here we have a canal crossing, as well as Sherwood Avenue, which is already closed. That canal likely will receive a culvert if it is still in use, probably sometime this winter, again, with as well as that other canal that we passed over earlier. So I don't know if that riprap covering over the edges of the embankment, if that was only because we're in the neighborhood of the Pozo Creek. maybe that section was at an increased risk of flooding, or if the entire alignment will be covered in riprap. Would be kind of nice, I'd say, if the entire alignment was. It would further prevent pedestrian activity on the right-of-way, but I just don't know if the entire alignment will be. Either way, we can see that more fencing has been installed to secure the high-speed rail right-of-way. Here at Peterson Road, you can see that this viaduct is nearly complete. There's the wing walls are still in forms, but I would imagine that if that viaduct isn't if the superstructure isn't already complete, it will be very shortly, as it was pretty far along when this footage was shot. And that's kind of what's nice about CP4 being so far along, is you can see how all these viaduct structures are so similar that they are just kind of repeated, as you know, from Kimberlina to Peterson to Pond Road, which we have here, and the Pond Road viaduct is actually complete. You can see that Magnolia Avenue off to the right has actually also been paved, and that is complete, even though it is currently not open to traffic, as the Magnolia Avenue has not been tied in up here on the north of us. And I'm sure that that is just kind of allowing people to continue to use the existing right-of-way of Magnolia Avenue just as a convenience without having to detour until, of course, it's time to officially close the road. And then, of course, you can see where Magnolia will curve off to the right there into its existing right-of-way. Here again, we see more sections of the riprap covering. So again, I don't know if only sections of this right-of-way will be kind of encased in riprap, or if the entire right-of-way will, and they've only gotten to a few sections of it. But either way, you can see these are dust clouds, probably some combination of wind, but also people working in the field. The entire Central Valley and San Joaquin Valley is just incredibly dry, and you can see the haze in the air. That wasn't wildlife smoke or anything, it's just airborne dust. It's pretty unbelievable how dusty and dry the whole area is. And there are some sections of the valley, such as this, where the fields have just been abandoned. I don't know if either it was some issue with water rights, or for whatever reason the land got overworked. I'm not exactly sure how it all works, but either way, the further north you get, the more water there is, and the more productive the land is. So there are several sections of land here in the southern San Joaquin Valley that are just basically abandoned, it looks like, and indeed very dry. Here's a couple more canals that will have to be bridged with culverts, cast in place or precast concrete. Not exactly sure until we see them go in, but nevertheless, that's a quite substantial canal, and I believe that these are all being fed with groundwater. You can see that those large towers, I believe, are connected to pumps pumping the groundwater out, particularly in the Corcoran area north of us in CP23. That's kind of the epicenter for the sinking of the valley. Some sections have sank up to like 15 feet around Corcoran. It's pretty incredible, but that's largely due to pumping of groundwater for irrigation. Here we have some more power lines that need to be removed, realigned. I would imagine many of these kind of low voltage power lines will probably be, I don't know if they'll be replaced with bores underneath the high-speed rail right away. I would kind of imagine, but they may be replaced with larger, taller power lines spanning over the tracks. It's really hard to say. I believe that's probably up to the discretion of the utility owner, but nevertheless kind of interesting. Here we have the also complete Garcas Highway Viaduct, and again, similar to what we saw back at Pond Road, you can see how Schofield Avenue has been rerouted off to the right, but again, it is, even though it's paved, it's still closed to traffic until the final cut-in of Schofield Avenue has been completed. But nevertheless, you can see how tall the high-speed rail embankment is in this area. I believe it has to be probably at least 15 feet above the grade of the roadway of Garcas Highway to allow traffic to pass underneath. So the right-of-way may be as much as 20 feet high above the surrounding grade in this area. And it's hard to say these sections of land that appear to be newly cleared and newly surrounded by silt fence, if these are recently acquired properties or exactly what the story was. But either way, obviously Schofield Avenue will continue on the east side of this right away, and the high-speed rail tracks will pass through with no viaduct being built to allow Schofield Avenue to pass underneath. But I would imagine that, yes, these were probably more recently completed or more recently acquired sections of land, as they have not received the dirt embankment build-up for the high-speed rail right-of-way. But nevertheless, obviously, I'm sure it's going to be moving forward here soon, if not already. And it's just kind of interesting seeing how these land acquisitions work, because this appears to be all one field, but it also appears to not potentially be under the high-speed rail authority's control. Maybe it is, and they're leaving it open for some type of wildlife use. I'm not exactly sure how that would all work, but either way, here we are at the Tulare-Kern County line. That's actually County Line Road. CP4 actually continues for 1 mile north into Tulare County. And we can see here is a section of, again, what I appear as a more recently acquired section of right-of-way. As we can see that there have been trees here that have recently removed. And there's one last segment separating CP4 and CP23, so I'm not exactly, here we are on the ground. You can see those removed trees much more detail, but so I'm not exactly sure if this section up ahead is either part of CP4 or CP23 or how that all works, but nevertheless, it's just kind of interesting. I'm sure it's also be kind of interesting to see how the different joint ventures interact with each other when they, on the sections where they border each other. But nevertheless, that's the end of CP4. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'm actually going to also upload a video with all 119 miles of drone footage strung together without audio commentary. So if you're interested in seeing that, watch out for it. Make sure you subscribe. You can check out my Patreon if you're interested in becoming a member, and all the usual stuff. So once again, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you all soon.